This is your 2-minute warning. 2 minutes until showtime. One minute warning.
The information you're looking for is buried by official narratives and propaganda. This is why TFR is 100% uncensored, unregulated, and listener-supported. The shows on TFR are not micromanaged by the station, and our hosts are expressed on are of those. If you happen to hear anything offensive, please send us an email to toughtitty@tfrlive.com, and we'll be happy to tell you that we really don't give a damn. We stand for freedom of speech and non-censorship. If you also stand for free speech, you can go to tfrlive.com/signup and sign up for a TFR supporter pass and help us in our mission to keep the airwaves uncensored and unregulated. TFR Live, your uncensored and unregulated protection from deception.
Christmas forecast. North Korea's Christmas gift. I'm Evan Haney. We've got some rough, wet weather from the upper south to the Florida Keys this weekend, and parts of California and the Northwest are getting soaked. But meteorologist Tom Sater says Christmas Eve and Christmas Day may actually be tender and mild.
Most of the country is looking at temperatures 10, 15 degrees warmer than they should be. From areas of the Front Range to the Great Lakes, maybe slightly cooler in upstate New York and parts of New England, but a good portion of the lower 48 really should have some good travel conditions and warmer than usual holiday.
After North Korea threatened to give the U.S. a Christmas gift, it followed up with more tests at its missile sites. Correspondent Will Ripley does not expect dictator Kim Jong-un to order any aggressive action right now.
My source says what the North Koreans are going to do, they're going to kind of take a step back, take a wait-and-see approach, continue to remind the world that they have this nuclear capability. And I wouldn't rule out a launch, by the way, in 2020, but they've already gotten the effect that they want around Christmas time, which is lots of Western media talking about the possibility of a launch. Why would they need to go through with it now when they could maybe save it for an even more vulnerable time closer to the U.S. election, perhaps?
President Trump continues to attack his impeachment. Correspondent Sarah Westwood reports his latest comments come after new emails show more about the timeline of when approved U.S. military aid to Ukraine was frozen.
All of this, as newly released emails show, that some aides may have had concerns about the suspension of the aid at the time that it happened over the summer, and that the request to freeze the security assistance to Ukraine was described at the time as sensitive in nature.
An email from a top White House official directed the Pentagon to withhold the aid just 91 minutes after Trump's July phone call with Ukraine's president. I'm Evan Haney.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network. TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
All right, welcome everyone to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live in the America Free Radio studio from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This will be our final live broadcast for 2019. 2019 was the year of light. 2020 is the year of action. It'll be time to get off the porch. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. We'll be safely traveling with us. Let me begin by giving you my Religion of Peace report. While we wait for the YouTube room to fill up, the Religion of Peace in the last 7 days conducted 26 attacks. In these 26 attacks, they killed 159 innocent people. They injured 142 innocent people. No suicide blasts in the last week. That's pretty rare. They spread their mayhem across 11 countries. All of this from the Religion of Peace. In the final segment tonight, I will be giving my not so traditional Christmas message. You want to stick around for that. We're going to cover a lot of stuff tonight, so fasten your seatbelts because there is something that I'm going to break tonight. It's my analysis. I don't think it's an opinion. I think the news is going to be talking about it in about 8 hours. But for now, this begins the news week right here. Let's get started. I call this Space Forced. Flanked by 2 F-35 jets in front of a giant American flag, President Trump on Friday of last week signed the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, but it had a twist to it. Because in it, it officially created the Space Force, the 6th and first new military branch since before I was born. He said, for the first time since Truman, we will create a brand new American military service. We will witness the birth of the Space Force. That's a big moment, and we're all here for it. Now, I have a tendency to believe this because, as you know, I'm kind of a futant. That is to say, I get glimpses of the future, bring those glimpses back, and within the authorization that I'm given, try to share that with you. I'm no prophet. But I will tell you that the vision of what is going to happen for the next 100 years is beginning to coalesce. It is one that has been trying to happen for quite some time, but the reason it hasn't happened will surprise you. It doesn't have anything to do with the moon or any beings that might be there or some extraterrestrial force saying, don't you dare come out here. It's something else. You're going to hear about it tonight. I've been saying for almost 35 years that he who controls the moon will control Earth. It is the high ground for our solar system. It is defensible and yet close enough to monitor, to defend, or attack anything happening on or off planet. What a surprise someone may get trying to attack Earth. The creation of the Space Force marked the achievement of one of the president's top national priorities. One thing is certain, this bill and the funding that is dedicated to it is only the beginning of a new race to the moon and beyond. Hopefully the focus on other frontiers will leave this world in peace as human factions worry more about getting a base on the moon for the next 50 years than they do over a stupid island in the Pacific. Space is the world's newest warfighting domain, Trump added. American superiority in space is absolutely vital. If you don't believe him, then you are naive. The seed of Lucifer is alive on earth, and there will never be peace as long as that comes to this world. This is necessary because Bill Clinton sold our space technology to China in exchange for a few $100,000 in campaign contributions. Before then, the spacefaring nations had all abided by the non-militarization of space treaty. China is a bad actor and does not honor treaties, even those to which it is a signatory. The world is now at a point where generations are willing to live in slavery. They're willing to give up their rights to learn and explore in exchange for free food, a place to live, something mundane to do with their entire lives. The human race has never been there before. Hardly an hour goes by now that the global syndicate is not at war with humans who do not want to live under global tyranny. The truth is that they do not have any weapons to fight because they have been disarmed by the very governments that want to enslave them. The Space Force will do more than expand the human race into the stars. It will save it by creating new frontiers that mankind will colonize and will declare to be free and independent from the global syndicate, just like Americans did hundreds of years ago. This new branch will reside, for now, inside the Air Force. The president thanked Vice President Mike Pence for his work in helping to establish the Space Force. He also announced the appointment of Air Force General John J. Raymond as the new Space Force commander. He will now join the Joint Chiefs. Imagine that. To mark the historic moment, the president signed the bill inside a giant aircraft hangar at the Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland, surrounded by an audience of several hundred young service members, Pentagon officials, and other distinguished guests. Also in attendance were about a dozen Republican members of Congress, Mac Thornberry, Joseph Wilson, Mike Rogers, French Hill, a whole bunch of others. The military's top civilian and uniformed leaders were all in attendance, as well as United States Trade Representative Ambassador Robert Lighthizer and White House advisor and first daughter Ivanka Trump. First Lady Melania Trump opened the ceremony with remarks wishing service members and their families a Merry Christmas. One airman told Breitbart News it was a historic moment to witness the creation of the Space Force. We like the guys down at Breitbart, like Alex. I like Raheem Kassam. He's a smart guy, good voice. I do speak with them almost weekly, sometimes every other day. And I share my ideas and thoughts with them. And I'm sure one of their staffers somewhere is listening to this program tonight. How do I know that? Because tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time, they begin speaking about the subjects that I discuss on my Sunday night program. Doc Skinner's calling me right now, and I don't think, well, let's just try it. Let's just see what happens. All right, I'm going to do this. Hello, Doc. You know I'm live on the air right now, but you are important, so I want to take your call. What's on your mind? I want to put you on speaker just so everyone can hear you. Oh, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am. My apologies. What's the topic for tonight?
We're discussing the Space Force right now.
Ooh, then I called in good. Well, then, yeah, I am so blown away by this. Have you heard anything about when they're going to let people start signing up?
You haven't signed up yet?
I'm too old. I know a lot of younger people would be interested in doing it, though.
Well, I'm a natural-born belter, so I'm never too old.
Well, yeah, no, I know some people. I do actually have one friend that is on the list. And I should ask him. I didn't even think about that. He's ex-military, but they are taking ex-military. for the Space Force, I heard.
Very interesting. I hear most of the trips in the beginning are all one way.
Well, true. That's what I've heard. Especially what was the one that starts with an S, Serpo, Planet Serpo.
Oh, interesting.
But they brought them back though. There's a few people that was a one-way trip that didn't come back. But
well, listen. My chat room says hello, Doc.
Oh, hello, everybody.
Doc is a film editor extraordinaire. Has a company called 1028 Productions. And he's putting a movie together called Fly, The Rise of Jet Parker. Oh, you're going to like it a lot.
Yes. And actually, I was calling you about birth.
I
have found I have found somebody to help us with the project. We'll just say that. And I wanted to share it with you. So we can do that at another time.
We can do it another time. We don't want to make a global announcement just yet.
Not yet. We gotta keep that mystery alive.
Yes. I will call you tomorrow, but I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, and have a wonderful show.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So I thought I would share that with you because it's important. Doc and I work together, different parts of the planet, but we're working on the Birth trilogy, bringing it to TV. I've been crafting the scripts from the trilogy that you have read. What? You haven't read it? Well, listen, there's still time. During the program, you can go to Amazon and you can buy it. And here's the cool thing about it. If you get the paperback or if you get the Kindle version or even the Nook version, I will give you the audio book for free. Any of them that you see there on the screen over here. See it? Right. This side. Yeah. All of those books are in audio, and I will give you the audio for free as a bonus. So if you're not a great reader, don't like reading, put it on the shelf and listen in your car while you're driving. All right, let's get back to it. Just didn't mean to plug a commercial in there, but it was a good time. So the Space Force is a very big deal. This bill is going to pay for scores of course, new aircraft, new tanks, and ships. But the Senate passed the bill on Thursday, sending it to the president, authorizes $783 billion for defense spending for fiscal year 2020. Now, obviously, a bunch of people in NATO are going to begin picking up their fair share of the costs. I can tell you, I've made this prediction years ago that if we took our entire defense budget, the whole thing, and we stopped putting iron in the sea and in the air, and we turned our entire defense budget toward space exploration and expanding human presence into the solar system, beginning with the moon. First of all of our allies would say, hey, wait a minute, what do they know that we don't know? And our enemies would say, hey, if they get there before us, we're in big trouble. And the race is on. And you know who wins? We do. We win because it creates a new frontier. So with the bill, Trump declared the rejection of American decline. Trump has raised spending for the military to new levels after a decade of deep cuts under sequestration. Oh my gosh, we barely lived through that. A lot of my friends over at Fort Bragg were dying. They were dying. They were starving. We wore little pins that had sequestration with the red hash mark through it. It was a terrible time. It was a terrible time. It was a concerted effort by our own executive branch under executive order and executive memorandum to dismantle the United States military. It was a horrible time. It was a very fearful time because war could have broken out and we would have been in really, really bad shape. Trump signed a defense bill authorizing $716 billion in 2018, $700 billion in 2019, and now $783 billion. And I guarantee you, those of you that are out there saying that these are all weapons of war, they're really not. They're weapons of peace. Because with a strong America, there is peace if you have a peaceful president. If you have a president that ran on a platform, no more endless wars, the industrial military complex designed to create war to justify itself is being phased out. It's being phased out at an extremely rapid rate. If you don't believe me, I've got a story tonight that's going to make you a believer. The Pentagon war that's going on, that I talk about in my book, Charm of Favor, it's real. It's real. They're fighting it office by office, hallway by hallway inside the Pentagon. Oh, they're not pointing guns at each other. They're pointing budgets at one another. They're pointing politics at one another. Believe me, I've been there a bunch of times. It is something to see. It is something to see that level of politics with brass, silver, and gold on the epaulets. All right, you all know that there is a war of global dominion going on as we speak. By the way, you need to notice there on the YouTube screen and also on the TFR live screen, if you're listening by computer audio only, the number is 213-233-3998. I've got it posted there, right there underneath. You can see it right there. And it's also on tfrlive.com. That is the call-in number. This is a live call-in show. So you want to call in, just like Doc called in on my my VIP line. You can't use that line. But you can call in on the studio line. It sounds a whole lot better anyway. And I would love to talk to you about anything. It doesn't matter what it is. I might hang up on you, but it's probably not going to happen unless you really cross the line of civility. So let's talk about the war of global domination, because this is something that has finally reared its ugly head outside of the dungeons of Washington. The Democrats declared war this week by impeaching 80 million Americans. Now, don't think that. They're not impeaching Trump. They could care less. They couldn't care less about Trump. Trump is an ignominy. Trump is temporary. They could hunker down for 5 years and be gone with Trump. That's not what they're worried about. They're worried about you. They're worried about us, 80 million of us out here. That's who they're impeaching. What started as a coup to overturn the 2016 election has now morphed into a civil war, as Nancy Pelosi presided over the passage of a bill which creates a clear constitutional crisis. Oh, you think you know what it is? Wait till you hear my analysis. This is full metal logic here. And that means that we have multiple factions vying for control of our government, which is the definition of a coup. And it could be war soon. I tried to discuss this with Alex Marlowe the other day, and he didn't want to hear it. But that was 2 weeks ago. Now he's ready to hear it. 23 radical Democrats have officially declared that abuse of power by a Donald Trump is an impeachable offense. In other words, the actions taken by the president to drain the swamp and destroy the wealthiest and most powerful money laundering operation in global history is seen as a direct threat to the government. Yeah, I said it. The government has been run by thieves and robbers for more than 50 years. Here's how it works. Congress writes laws that collect and disperse taxpayer money as it sees fit. It was a small and manageable operation until Ronald Reagan. Bush and the U.S. military showed Congress how to launder money on a scale never attempted before. He would sell drugs inside America, use the off-the-books cash to buy guns, and smugglers to ship those guns to South America. Everyone along the way, including Governor Bill Clinton, skimmed cash for letting it happen illegally under their noses. Instead of getting caught by the law or by Congress, they stuffed their own pockets as well. The Clinton crime syndicate was born out of George Bush Sr.'s money laundering operation. The Clintons spent hundreds of millions to buy the superdelegates and compromise Bush Sr. They even hired a third-party candidate to split the conservative vote and allow Clinton to win with just 43% of the vote. Oh, yeah, you squawk about the popular vote. Bill Clinton had 57% of the country vote against him. 57%. But he won because his opponent was two people. Yeah. The model was proven to work. But presidents were thinking too small, or thinking with their penis instead of with a focused dream of global domination. Bush Jr. figured it out. But first, they needed to be able to bring the armed American to his knees in one fell swoop. They didn't do it by collecting all the guns. They did it by creating a demon enemy. The enemy became terror, terror itself. They killed more than 3,200 Americans to make the sale. This time, it wasn't a few $1 billion. It was trillions. The global syndicate trained and installed Barack Obama. He ripped America apart. He divided America into dozens of small factions and then skillfully told them all that they were alone and victims of America. He paid them, he oppressed them, and he indoctrinated their children. But then he did something much worse. He funneled $10 trillion in less than 8 years through the money laundering government established by the Clinton crime syndicate. Congress would send the money to foreign countries where it would be sifted through layers of nonprofits and shell corporations. Each time it was sifted, payments would go out to the elected officials to keep the money flowing. Within a few short years, every single member of Congress in both parties was a multi-millionaire. The trillion-dollar media empire run by only 6 men worked in movies, they worked in news programs, the internet, to create a surveillance and censoring system like nothing ever seen before. Hundreds of people were murdered and hundreds of thousands of people were killed to facilitate the major acquisitions and redraw national boundaries to form what some are calling a caliphate. But accurate analysis would soon prove nothing more than global domination by a small and ancient group of leaders. There are some of us who saw what was being done, and we knew what needed to be done. Donald Trump spent his entire life building an empire of wealth that would allow him to be elected president so he could stop them before it was too late. He waited until the very last possible moment to make his move because he knew it would kill him and his family. If Hillary Clinton had been elected president, the United States would cease to exist and the world would be delivered, finally, to the syndicate. More than 50 Republicans retired and left government, knowing he was coming for them. Democrats decided to lock arms and fight. That is the war we are in. That is why the Democrats had to fabricate 2 articles of impeachment that took nearly 3 years to craft. They aren't even violations of law, and they know it. These opinions and presumptions do not amount to high crimes and misdemeanors. The implications of this impeachment are, however, staggering. It says explicitly that the U.S. president cannot discharge his duties as a law enforcement official if the person of interest is someone of the opposite party or a potential electoral opponent. Can you believe that? It says that political considerations are all that are required to impeach a president. The syndicate is so feared that 33 radical Democrats can command the unwavering allegiance of every single member of its party to impeach 80 million Americans. It's true. We'll cover more when we come back after this break. Don't go away. More X Squared Radio coming at you right after these messages. And Merry Christmas, everyone. It's going to be an awesome program tonight, and it's going to be an awesome holiday season. You YouTubers, hang out. You got to live through the news. TFR Live is used to it. TFRlive.com if you want to join the archives. I think they're awesome. Because if you missed this program, you can go back and listen to hundreds more. We'll be right back after this.
Hey everyone, it's Chris Gio, founder of Truth Frequency Radio and host of Beyond the Veil. The mainstream media and establishment are running scared right now, and they've prominently featured truthfrequencyradio.com as number 89 on the federal government's hit list, also known as the fake news list, which is essentially a list of sites slated for censorship on Facebook, YouTube, Google, and other social media. Now is the time for you to get involved. Share your favorite TFR shows far and wide on forums and social media. Tell your friends and family about your favorite shows. If you're a business owner, get in touch with us to feature your product or service right here on TFR. And if you haven't done so already, become a TFR supporter now and get unlimited commercial-free downloads in high quality. Visit truthfrequencyradio.com/sign-up. Thank you for making TFR the leader in independent and uncensored talk radio. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
Hey folks, guess what the #1 phrase that Life Change Tea receives by email? You ready? We love this tea. We love this tea. Time after time, week after week, we love this tea. Life Change Tea gives you more energy, a beautiful cleansing, and fulfills its slogan perfectly. The tea that makes you go. So if you want to be on your health game, log on to getthetea.com and order Life Change Super Strength Tea. Packages come in a 1-month supply, and when you brew this stuff, wait until you see the results. Aren't we all about the results? And with a lot of people's health struggling, we can use a little bit of help. Doctors will tell you disease starts in the gut. So log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Be our next email saying, I love this tea. I mean, I love this tea. Get the tea at getthetea.com. Helping America one tea bag at a time.
For millennia, mankind has been searching for answers to the big questions, such as, where did the universe come from? Where did we come from? Why are we here? Are we alone? And just what the heck is the Sasquatch all about? I can't promise you answers, and neither can the Woo Crew, but they invite you to join them Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, midnight in the UK, for Freaky Friday, exclusively on Truth Frequency Radio. Spirituality, multiverse, quantum mechanics, the occult, and so much conspiracy analysis that it will make your mind melt. Take my word for it. Freaky Friday. It's more than a show. It's a way of life. I am Stephen Hawking, and I am proud to be a Wookiee.
You are now tuned into the Truth Frequency.
Your protection from deception. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, to America Free Radio. Yes, we are live at the week of Christmas. Christmas Day is Wednesday. We will not be live on Revolution Radio on Wednesday. And I may be able to do next Sunday's program. We'll just see. But I want to tell you a little bit about the success mentoring classes. At first, I had planned to do these as physical locations, Seattle, Charlotte, etc. But what I found were not enough people were signing up in those individual cities. Plus, I got a lot of comments. People were saying, I would probably come, but it's cold. I don't want to get out. I don't want to travel. It's raining. If you do a webinar, it'd be much better. So I'm converting everything over to webinars. We're no longer going to fly to cities and do all of that. Now, all you have to do is go to brooksagnew.com, click on the webinars link. You can see right there on the YouTube faceplate here. Click on the webinars link and you can select a date. Don't worry about the city. Anywhere in the world. Select a date, sign up, and a few days before I will send you the Zoom link and you can come in and you'll still get the 5.5 hours of content. And in a way, it'll be a little more personal because, well, you'll be in your pajamas probably, but not really. The point is you can get better face-to-face on the webinar and you can ask questions, put things in the chat, and I can send you files, which it will work a lot better. It'll work better for you. I would much rather see you face-to-face. I would love to shake your hand and feel your heart. But economics the way they are, live events are almost extinct. There are a few still left, the big ones, the ones that are well-financed, but everybody else is going broke doing it because webinars are virtually taking over the universe. So do that. Go to brooksagnew.com, sign up for the webinar, and do it that way. Easy enough. All right, let's get back to it because it's important what we're talking about here. It is a clear violation of Congress's role. And this is the fear that the Founding Fathers had. The Founding Fathers weren't afraid of a powerful president. One guy was easy to put in a can. They needed a powerful executive. They needed somebody who brought spirit and brought personality to the country. They needed someone who was a sociopath almost, someone who was unpredictable because they were mostly concerned about our enemies. You know what happens when you have just a group of people that make a decision and you don't have a leader? Well, sure you do. All you have to do is turn the news on and look at England. England is that way. It's very difficult in a parliamentary system with just ministers. Yes, you have a prime minister, but the prime minister doesn't lead anything. All he is a facilitator. He's just a guy that puts the ideas forward. It's the MPs that actually have to vote and make it work. And then after that, for the last 30 years, you've had Brussels with ever-increasing power, being able to veto whatever the parliament comes up with. And you see what they do. They do nothing. They do nothing. They lost their nation. They lost their nation because of this. And we would have too. The Founding Fathers knew that King George or some king or some sovereign would take us over because we didn't have an executive at the head of everything. So they did it right. They created the executive. But in the founding, in the Federalist Papers, if you read them, and I've read them, some of them are well worded, and others are kind of amateur in getting their thoughts out. But it's a good college course. You don't need a degree, but go take the course. You could take it at Hillsdale. Hillsdale's got a great course on it. You know what they were worried about? They were worried about Congress. They knew that once Congress figured out how to unify in their purpose to make themselves the supreme rulers of America and become, of course, richer than kings, they would happily destroy the republic and take the people's wealth as their own. And this is precisely why they made the president so powerful and so directly connected to the people. This is precisely why they placed the Article 5 clause in the Constitution. It wasn't to rein in the president. No, it was to rein in Congress by temporarily removing their power to write laws while the states amended the Constitution to write the ship called America. It is not an abuse of power for the president to obstruct Congress. It is precisely the use of presidential power that has kept them from destroying the republic for 232 years. The Constitutional Convention, by the way, was in 1787, for those of you who went to government schools. The second article is even worse than the first one. It claims that 33 radical Democrats rule America. This is fully unconstitutional, since it subverts the power of the judicial branch to settle disputes between the executive and legislative branches as established by the Constitution. Pelosi merely wields the cudgel that is breaking the legs of the presidency. She doesn't care about beating Trump. She wants to break the presidency. Pelosi, the Democrats' broadening of the definition of the sole power of impeachment, says that whatever Congress deems to be worthy of an impeachment inquiry is therefore law, and the other branches have no say in the matter. Well, this is absolute nonsense. It is completely tyrannical. Rod Rosenstein and Andrew Weissman tried to use an equally broad interpretation of obstruction of justice to include future harm to continue the special counsel's investigation into Trump's alleged collusion with Russia. Moreover, it renders the concept of judicial review as laid down, and you can go back and read Marbury versus Madison. This was basically a test of wills between the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and President Jefferson. It rendered it null and void. Congress cannot just make up laws. It can't just make up crimes out of whole cloth and then unilaterally declare them constitutional under the rubric of impeachment. The Supreme Court has the right to strike down bills Congress passes as unconstitutional. Of course, they have been kept out of this process so far. I believe that Pelosi is going to say, wait a minute, and we already heard a little bit of this come from Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Wait a minute. There are two justices that were appointed by Trump, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, and they cannot be involved in this. This has to be the other justices that were there before Trump became president. I'm telling you, they're not going to allow him to defend himself. Now, when viewed dispassionately, which is a little difficult to do today, obstruction of Congress is not a crime, but rather a duty of each of the other two branches of government. In fact, it's our duty. It's our duty to obstruct Congress. If Congress subpoenas me, well, of course I would go, because it would be the worst decision they ever made. I would be like Howard Hughes. I would rip their guts out right there on the floor. It would be awesome. It would be awesome. Don't you think? Would you pay me to go to Congress? You would, wouldn't you? It's so funny. Congress cannot represent America to foreign powers. That's not their job. The president cannot assess taxes or decide which laws he will and will not enforce or declare war, but he can lead and set the spirit of the nation. That's the whole three co-equal branches of government. That's what it's supposed to mean. The judicial branch routinely oversteps its authority. We have seen that over the decades. The president tries to write law. We've seen that. Congress tries to rule the country. We've seen that. At the end of the day, all three of these branches, you know who they work for? They work for us. They belong to us. We can use the Convention of States to correct things if we have the resolve and if we have the leadership to follow through. And I think that's really been the problem with the Convention of States. I wrote the book in 2012. that started the movement that we currently have for a convention of states. It's been 7 years since that book came out. It was a #1 bestseller. I sent it to every single legislature in the country. Now here we are, almost 4 million Americans strong. We have delegates in all 50 states. And guess what we don't have? We don't have a leader. Oh, yeah, we have Jim DeMint. Oh, yeah, we have Faulkner. We have some other personalities that are out there. But you know what? They're tacticians. They're not strategists. What they need is a voice. What they need is the voice of the revolution. I volunteer. You don't have to pay me anything. I'll do it. Now, I'm no legal scholar. So when I see how ridiculous these articles are, then you know this has nothing to do with the law, but everything to do with power. I thought, just like you did, that this impeachment was really about, distracting and covering up the multiple layers of corruption inside our government that forms the most powerful money laundering machine the world has ever known. I thought that myself. I was there with you. And then it came to me. Many of the tendrils emanating from the events surrounding the FISA warrants improperly granted connected directly to the Clintons, directly to the Clinton crime syndicate made of Jeffrey Epstein and William Browder and the rape of Russia in the post-Soviet 90s. It was all linked together. You and I both know that if Hillary had become president, none of these crimes would ever have seen the light of justice. Congressman Steve King from Iowa argued that House Democrats impeached President Trump to shield themselves from the reckoning that will come after U.S. Attorney John Durham releases his final report on the establishment of the Russia investigation. Here's what he said. I mean, how bad does this have to get before the American people understand here's what Democrats are doing? They're impeaching Donald Trump not just because they don't like him, but it's a shield for them to defend themselves from the reckoning that will come when the Justice Department gets put back on the rails for law again. Close quote. The DOJ Inspector General's report on the origins of the Russia report found errors with the FISA application process. King said Attorney General William Barr and U.S. Attorney John Durham will come out with more of truth. I do think that's part of it. I mean, we're talking an entire generation or more of U.S. officials and politicians implicated in some of the worst crimes of the past 30 years. You know that. I know that. Mass murder, embezzlement, bribery, assassinations, infanticide, illegal drug and human trafficking, the likes of which the world has never seen before. For example, Congress sends $500 million a year to Planned Parenthood. They turn around and write a check for $56 million to the DNC. That is just straight up money laundering, Earth Explorers. But no one will dare do anything about it. Why? Because not only is the DNC raking in $56 million a year, but they get to sacrifice millions of poor, white, and minority babies to bless the operation with blood of the most innocent humans on earth. But is this why they're willing to risk a full-blown constitutional crisis and civil war to remove Trump from office? It got me thinking too. The polls are shifting because 80 million Americans, some of them listening to this program right now, tonight, they support Trump. They support America. Pelosi could just be following orders from a very, ancient order of evil that is plotting to take over America and wipe away the 2016 election. Or, and this is the groundbreaker right here, this is the revolution. She could be possessed with lust, and she is triggering and targeting the presidency itself for herself. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But think about it. Think about it. Trump is leading Americans against their plan. If the Democrats succeed in getting their articles submitted to the Senate, the president is impeached officially. It's done. That creates two forms of constitutional crisis. The first is that we have never had an impeached president on the ballot for the presidency before. Johnson did not get the nomination from his party. Nixon resigned. Clinton was already in his final term. The trillion-dollar media empire will mobilize to prevent Trump from being placed on state ballots. If states refuse to put him on the ballot, then he cannot win the election. If the RNC is pressured to nominate someone else or face years of legal battles and expenses, then he could be asked not to run. Does the Supreme Court really want to face 6 to 10 states who refuse to issue a ballot with his name on it? Really? In 11 months' time? Pelosi told reporters on Capitol Hill she wanted to see how McConnell, the leader of the Senate, would lay out the trial's rules before she sent over the articles to the Senate. I'm going to give you a breakthrough right here, just a brainstorm. I've told you about this before, but I don't think you were really paying attention, so I'm going to say it again. Every single court runs on rules. Every single ball game, every single match that we have runs on a rule book. If you go to federal court and you don't know the rules in that blue book, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to get anywhere. The other side's going to tear you apart because they know the rules. It's a big, thick book. It's about this thick. Great read. Great read. If you ever want to read federal rules of the court, you should do that. It will make you a much better American. But the rules of the Senate are set by the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee is run by the majority party. That's why that things are so messed up the way they are. Harry Reid was able to set rules that were Stalinistic and kept right things from being done. It allowed a lot of subterfuge to go on. McConnell is the leader of the majority, and he runs the Rules Committee. However, the key here is to remember that it is the majority party that runs the Rules Committee. In other words, they have the majority of the members of the Rules Committee. But things are done in the Senate based on consensus. That is to say 51, because there are 100 senators, so it makes it pretty easy. 51 makes things go. If 51 senators got together, they could introduce new rules. They could. I'm just telling you, they could. And there are 4 rules that they could put in. The first would be very easy. The first would be to make all votes relative to this impeachment secret. Not a roll call ballot, but a secret ballot. If senators could vote in secret, I believe that the 70% of the Senate that is compromised, they have bad debts, they have crimes, they have adultery, they have love children, they have accounting problems. Something the FBI has found out about them has them compromised, and all it has to do is leak out, and not only will their careers be over, their marriages will be over, and all that savings goes away. Their reputation is trashed. Yes, I do believe 70% of the Senate is compromised. And I think you do too. Just looking through the chat room, I think they agree with me as well. So they vote to make the ballot secret because, after all, we don't want to draw any retribution, right? It's a safety thing. You know, look what happened. Look at how nasty these Republicans are. Why? If they knew that I was voting to remove President Trump, they'd egg my house. They'd key my car. They'd threaten my kids. I'm telling you, secret ballot. Easy peasy. Easy peasy. Rule number 2, and you heard Jeff Flake say it today. He said it today. He backed me up. Only President Trump is on trial here. That's it. Nobody else is on trial. We're not going to bring anybody in and put them on trial here and prove them guilty in order to free Donald Trump from these charges. Only President Trump is on trial. Now, once that rule is established, there are 2 more rules. Excuse me. 2 more rules. The first rule is that no elected official or candidate or their families can be called as witnesses in the trial. We're not going to cross-examine people that have nothing to do with Donald Trump. Just because you want to call Joe Biden's son in because he was involved in the money laundering scheme in Burisma, that has nothing to do with the impeachment of Donald Trump. We're not going to allow that. No family members of candidates, because that's meddling with the 2020 election, and we're not going to allow that. Done. And the final rule, no foreign leaders, no foreign members of other nations are going to be called as witnesses in this trial. That will be considered foreign meddling in the 2020 election, and we're not going to allow it. Now, with those 4 rules in place, Donald Trump cannot defend himself in the Senate. Pelosi told reporters on Capitol Hill she wants to see how McConnell would lay out the trial's rules before she sent over the articles to the Senate. She said, we can't name managers until we see what the process is on the Senate side. And I would hope that would be very soon. So far, we haven't seen anything that looks fair to us. Close quote. There's no set time frame for Pelosi to carry out this step. I've heard you out there saying 70 days, 90 days. Fake news, not true. She could take 11 months if she wants to. There is no rule on the amount of time. But she suggested Wednesday night that she will hold off until she receives assurances about the Senate trial proceedings. Probably won't happen till second week in January. Here's what she said. This is what I don't consider a fair trial. That leader McConnell has stated that he's not an impartial juror. He's going to take his cues, in quotes, from the White House, and he's working in total coordination with the White House counsel's office, close quote. The second constitutional crisis comes when Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies shortly. Congress and the trillion-dollar media empire will assert that an impeached president cannot appoint a Supreme Court justice because of a conflict of interest. Nancy Pelosi is delaying the official presentation of the House's ruling to the Senate, and now we know why. She has another foul and manipulative card up her crusty sleeve. Pelosi is filing a motion to have the powers of the president suspended until such a time as his innocence has been proven. Does that ring a bell with you? You need to come in here and prove your innocence. Well, I'm sorry, Nancy, but that hasn't been the case for 232 years. Every American has been exonerated since 1787. It is up to you to prove guilt. We are already innocent. And that's the way it is in the United States of America. Democrat staffers are busily preparing the legal documentation necessary to enact the move, and arguments will be made before a federal court right after Christmas. Pelosi argues that it is reasonable for the people to have doubts about the intentions of the president in light of the fact that he faces a trial for criminality. The White House, of course, will present the assumption of innocence until guilt is proven. Legal scholar Satya Martin feels that both arguments have merit. Nancy Pelosi may be trying to steal the presidency for herself. But wait, wouldn't that make Mike Pence president if Trump is removed? Yes, it would. Except that yesterday, Adam Schiff for Brains already started his public statements that he has dirt on Pence as well, and he is ready to release it. Pence will be forced to resign. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like Beyond the Veil with Chris and Cherie Geo, X Squared with Brooks Agnew, Paranormal Portal with Brent Thomas, Sharonism Raw with Sharon and Missa, Fearless with Frank Castle, Strange World with Mark Sargent, The Eye of Ra with Ra Castaldo, The Infinite Fringe with Billy Ray, Ironworks with Josh Corey, The Kev Baker Show, and dozens more. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117 or call into your favorite show toll free at 833-TFR-LIVE. Uncensored talk and news you won't hear in the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
Risky holiday travel weather. Democrats campaign. I'm Evan Haining. There's rain throughout the South, and some of the heaviest is in Florida. But meteorologist Tom Sata reports California, especially the San Francisco area, is getting its share too.
We've had 85-mile-per-hour wind gusts. We've had some flooding in Oakland. There are some power outages, and this is going to drop a lot of valley rainfall and mountain snow. We call it a Pineapple Express because it looks like it originates from Hawaiian Islands as it moves in.
Christmas Eve and Christmas Day are expected to generally be mild. In the nation's capital.
And your word broke his sword when
the United States Marine Band and 3 cantors were on hand when the first candle in the national menorah was lit on this first night of Hanukkah. Well, contenders for the Democratic presidential nomination are campaigning. In Indianola, Iowa, Field of Dreams actor Kevin Costner went to bat for Mayor Pete Buttigieg. In Atlantic, Iowa, former Vice President Joe Biden talked about President Trump's impeachment, saying there's nothing to celebrate about it.
The rest of the world looks at this and wonders what's going on. But in this case, don't get me wrong, Donald Trump has brought this on himself. He indicted himself on the White House lawn. He said, we were left no choice.
Boeing's Starliner failed in its attempt to link up to the International Space Station. But, as you can hear from Mission Control, it still made history.
An historic landing in White Sands, New Mexico concludes the first flight test of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft, the first time an American-made, human-rated capsule has landed on land.
Good news for holiday travelers. Industry analyst Trilby Lundberg reports the average price at the pump is down about 4 cents a gallon for regular from 2 weeks ago at $2.61. Still, that's 18 cents higher than it was a year ago. I'm Evan Haining.
You are now tuned into the Truth Frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
We have an excellent chat room going on there. Free message says, don't forget the compromised John Roberts overseeing the trial. That's a very good point. And she also makes a good observation here, or he. Pence's wife would likely plead with him to resign. She is a big fan of Hildebeest. Hildebeest. Excellent point. And MG makes a couple of good observations. By the way, the chat room is full if you want to get in there. Dolores is there. MG is there. MacGyver, good to see you, my friend. Free message. Agatha Velvet is there. Let's see. Teresa is there. Or Terry. Let's see. Good thoughts. And yes, it's possible that the judge will step down and be replaced by an unelected bureaucrat to govern the trial. Someone who comes from the ranks of the FISA, the old Obama-appointed judges. End game of Pelosi presidency. That's what I say. Uyapo, and I'm not even going to attempt that last name. Welcome to the chat room, though. Brilliant thought. End game of Pelosi presidency. Hillary as VP. Pelosi steps down. Hillary becomes president. Hey, we're in strange times. Strange times indeed. Hello, CC. Lots of people in the chat room. I'm so glad that you all are here. So, when I talk about the $1 trillion media empire, I am not talking about the America Free Radio studios. America Free Radio is funded completely by me. And you could help out at Christmas time. It'd be kind of nice. Down at the bottom of that chat stream, you'll see a little square with a dollar sign in it. You know what that is? That's the donate button. You can actually put money in the chat room, and I will highlight your chat and read it if it's not too profane. And it would help keep the lights on here next year. So 2019 is the year of light, and 2020 is the year of action. If you want to know how to take that action, you need to attend one of my webinars. They were live. We were doing them live, but in the live, you only get 90 minutes. In the webinar, you get 5.5 hours. It's spread out. You don't have to sit there for 5.5 hours and, not eat. And there are other things. I'll send you files. I can help you build a business plan. I can help you craft a spreadsheet. You're looking at one of the most accomplished Six Sigma Master Black Belts in the entire country. And I get to mentor you directly. So if you have a dream, or you have a thought of a dream, if you have a piece of a dream, I can help you formulate it, target it, put it out there in the future, and we can make it happen. 2020 is the year of action. The Roaring 20s are beginning, and you might as well be a part of it. So let's talk a little bit about this $1 trillion media empire. So the United States has the world's highest rate of children in detention. You remember that headline? Oh, it was terrible. Is this worth reporting? Well, maybe. Maybe not. Nevertheless, Agence France Presse, or what's known as AFP, and Reuters, they reported that exact headline. Yep, they sure did. Attributing the information to a United Nations study, just as I predicted, on migrant children detained at the U.S.-Mexico border. It was a humanitarian crisis the likes of which the world had never seen from America. It was official, and it was complete with pictures and interviews and witnesses. It was awful, the way these people were being treated. But then, a very strange thing happened. The two agencies very suddenly and completely retracted, deleted, withdrew, and demolished the story. You remember that? You remember that? If they could have used one of those Men in Black, memory zappers on us, they would have. Sheepishly, the two news organizations explained that, you see, the UN data that they used, it was all accurate. The trouble is, it was from 2015. Yeah, part of a border crackdown that had begun years earlier. Now, we all know who was president in 2015. It wasn't the evil, child-caging monster President Trump. It was the nice, compassionate, child-caging monster President Barack Obama. The story made Obama look bad. Hence, the story was removed. Not updated, not corrected, expunged, gone. Can't find it anywhere. Most people think news organizations flat out fabricate stories, and that isn't too often the case. Fake news is a problem. It does occur. But the much more systemic and deeply entrenched attack on truth is the casual, everyday bias of reporters. And sometimes it's not so casual. You see, a great lie is not full of falsehood. It's full of truth. It's just twisted. And it's misdirected, like a birth defect. Most of the pieces are there, just in the wrong place. AFP and Reuters deleted a story that was, in a narrow sense, true. That a UN study claimed the United States had some 100,000 children in migrant-related detention. What the agencies didn't seem to like was that Obama, rather than Trump, locked up a lot of children. This is what's important. Not that AFP and Reuters deleted a story, but that the implication of the story, it meant everything to them. Every time you read something from AFP, Reuters, CNN, Washington Post, and let's also throw Bloomberg in there, you should be thinking not, this is fake news. You should be thinking, what's the agenda? What are they trying to accomplish here? To paraphrase Chuck Schumer's infamous and instructive comment on the CIA, news outlets have 6 ways from Sunday of getting you to think what they want you to think, none of which involves actually making stuff up. You can add Bloomberg to all of that. Yeah, that's the same billionaire who's running for president. Imagine that. One of the world's richest media moguls actually using the presidential pen. The truth, it'd be like having it would be like having a crazy newspaper man, owner of the LA Times, or I'm trying to think of the name now. He was a very wealthy newspaper man on the West Coast, and he said, "You give me a photograph and I will give you a war." Somebody in the chat room will... He's the guy that invented the term yellow journalism. Started the Spanish-American War all by himself. Yeah, MacGyver says, UN, what a joke. You may think a joke. And I, myself, I've always wanted one of those little blue helmets in my trophy case. May get one before I check off of this planet. The truth is that Obama's approval ratings were mostly really low compared to Trump's, typically in the low to mid-40s. Polls would come out saying this, and the Ron Burgundys would simply just not report it. They just won't tell you about it. You know, I have people in my office that we were kind of working an open cubicle type of office, other engineers. There are people in that cubicle office, we have 3 of them, I believe, that never heard, not even one time ever heard Joe Biden confess that he shook down. Well, yeah, Pulitzer, yellow journalism. I understand the Pulitzer Prize, but this goes back. I just can't recall the name now. I want to say Trench, but that's not right. It's something like that. He was a billionaire newspaper man on the West Coast. His daughter was kidnapped and ended up being part of the terrorists because she had some kind of, she fell in love with one of the terrorists. Her name is Patty, but it's not Patty Duke. Okay, come on. We'll get it. They had never heard that Joe Biden tried to shake down or tried to, the quid quo pro that Joe Biden confessed to about firing the Ukrainian Attorney General to stop the, William Randolph Hearst. That's the one. See, Patty Hearst, not Patty Duke. Big difference there, big difference. So we have a great chat room. It's great. William Randolph Hearst was the billionaire newspaper man that started the Spanish-American War by taking a photograph of a boiler explosion and calling it an attack on an American ship. We kind of sort of sunk the Spanish Navy over that. Yeah, all that was done by a newspaper man. Can you imagine Bloomberg being president and having that kind of power? It was one of the most powerful newsrooms in the entire world. Yeah. Well, Trump doesn't enjoy this courtesy. No news organization is going to associate Trump with good news, except here. We'll do that. A recent Newsbusters survey found that over a recent 6-week period, not even 1% of network news reporting on the Trump administration even mentioned positive economic news. Have you taken a look at the economy lately? Do you even open those 401k statements? One of my friends made $50,000 in 1 year alone just on 401k mutual funds. Another trick is soberly reporting the policy proposals of Politician 1, but focusing entirely on the miscues and petty controversies of Politician 2. You might, if you're a news consumer, be under the impression that Senator Elizabeth Warren has a sober, well-reasoned set of plans. Well, these plans are so far-fetched as to be breathtaking. She vowed $20.5 trillion in the new federal spending. Yeah, an increase of 40% on top of current levels. And yet Warren isn't the candidate the media habitually portrays as unhinged. Wow. Meanwhile, the gaffes of Democrats attacked very little interest. Network News basically ignored the mini scandal involving little Peter Buttcrack, who promoted a list of black supporters, many of whom were not black or did not support him. The networks declined to cast little Peter Buttcrack as racially insensitive. Still, another trick is deciding that a matter that advances the wrong narrative is simply local news, hence not worthy of attention from the major outlets. Any crimes committed by illegal immigrants can safely be ignored by CNN. But any crimes associated with right-wingers become cause for national dismay, soul-searching, oh my gosh, domestic terrorists. I have a story on that tonight, too, that will chill you to the bone. CNN did a massive story this week involving the talents of 5 reporters after someone at Syracuse University sent out a white supremacist manifesto to several cell phones, and racist graffiti was discovered in a residence hall. Previously, similar outbreaks of campus fear turned out to be based on hoaxes. Yet, if this story dissolves, CNN can accurately claim, hey, we were just reporting that students were scared. The impression created by 1,000 stories like this, the America in 2019 is a white supremacist nightmare, all linger to say the same thing. Using or ignoring facts in accordance with whether they create the desired impression is the principal agenda of today's media. You know, and I know, that if Hillary had won, the billions in money laundering would have been protected. If Pelosi's coup succeeds, the Democrats will succeed in covering up their crimes, albeit after we, the people, know about them. Either way, this coup attempted by Pelosi is now open warfare. There will be casualties. You cannot unsee this kind of evil. So watch your eyes, because the bomb is in play. So how do you win a war like this? Yes, there are some suggestions in the chat room that I probably shouldn't share with you, because it would probably share with you the general feeling that's out there. But step one is, of course, you seize and freeze the money. Police described the four as leaders of Spark Alliance, a mysterious organization that has been one of the main financiers of the protest movement, including by bailing protesters out of jail and helping to defray their legal fees. Well, guess what the police did? The police seized $9 million in bank deposits and personal insurance products from Spark, claiming that the group broke laws about money laundering. In a posted response to its Facebook group, Spark blasted the police, accusing them of deliberately trying to cut off one of the most important avenues of financing in the protest movement. We're talking about? No, we're not talking about Baltimore. We're talking about Hong Kong. The police attempted through false statements to distort the work of Spark Alliance as money laundering for malicious uses. The group said in a statement on Facebook, Spark Alliance condemns this kind of defamatory action. The arrests and seizures shed light on the inner workings of the Hong Kong protest movement. Millions of Americans who have read the news reports about the protests have probably been left wondering how the protesters became so well organized. Well, this is how. Since the beginning of the movement, wealthy working Hong Kongers have observed their duty to help. And they help those battling it out on the front lines in any way possible, usually by writing checks. Mostly they do it through donations to groups that purport to help bail out protesters after they've been arrested, or groups that simply provide food and shelter for the demonstrators, many of whom are teenagers or in their early 20s. This division of responsibilities is part of what's allowed the movement to continue on for as long as it has. But by cracking down on the money, Hong Kong police are essentially pulling the rug out from under Hong Kongers facing criminal charges for protest-related activities. Because, you know, if they're kept in jail and they're extradited to China, you'll never see those kids again. And they'll be missing kidneys and livers and hearts. They'll be stuck in mines and forests and fields. You'll never see them again. And this is why they're fighting so hard. Because Spark Alliance and another more transparent fund called the 612 Humanitarian Fund are responsible for financing the protest movement. The two funds account for 70% of the money raised by the protest movement. The impact of this crackdown is twofold. Not only will protesters counting on these funds to pay their legal fees be left out in the cold, but the renewed police scrutiny could deter some working Hong Kongers who have been supporting the movement with donations. They could go after their money. The crackdown deals a major blow to the demonstrators. The latest arrests risk deterring Hong Kong's professional class from giving more cash. Funds bankrolling the protests have collectively raised at least $33 million since June. That's a lot of money. Before the arrests, most Hong Kongers didn't know the identities of anyone behind Spark Alliance. Its website and bank accounts, before they were shut down, all forwarded the money to a pest control company. But Spark proved its reliability early on by helping bail protesters out of jail. But the group had been under scrutiny even before the police got involved. Last month, HSBC shut down the group's account, saying they had detected activity that differed from the stated purpose of the account. How many of you run a small business with your personal checking account? Yeah. Well, you need to document the money that you're moving from your personal checking account to your business checking account. Call it expenses, call it a loan, but you have to document it. Otherwise, if your business has a problem, they're going to come right back and take all the money out of your personal account. Just a little advice that you would get from my mentoring class. So, many thousands of protesters who have been arrested, the criminal penalties that they could face without adequate legal representation could land them in prison for the rest of their lives. Without having the support of knowing their bail will be paid in the event of an arrest, many demonstrators wouldn't be so eager to fight their way past police barricades and take other risks like that. But many members of the protest movement believe the 612 Fund is too stodgy in how it operates. Most see organizations like Spark Alliance as being closer to the true ideals of the movement. Probably have something like that in this country, but I don't know what it is. I have enough time to cover this story. I call it the betrayal, and this is why you need to know it. You see, each time the global syndicate moves its agenda forward, there are humans that get crushed. They don't care about us. They don't care about you if they recruit you. They have one goal, and that is the capture of every soul in the world. And they are highly successful on many worlds, and they are succeeding here as well. Sometimes the guilty can squeeze out a few more years of life if they belong to the syndicate. Sometimes, rather than face their own death or the death of their families, they agree to resign and leave their duty station to avoid the syndicate assassination. Ambassador Tina Kadenow, senior advisor for international cooperation, has left the Pentagon. The Department of Defense confirmed to Defense News Wednesday. Why does this matter? Because she's the fifth one. She's the fifth top official in just 7 days to exit or announce their departure from the Pentagon, according to the Defense News and The Hill. What's the big picture? Per the two news outlets, Kadenow left her role December 16th. It was announced on December 12th that Randall Shriver, the top Asia policy official, would leave his position soon. A day later, Jimmy Stewart, the acting Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, said he was retiring. Stephen Walker, head of Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, that's DARPA, resigning in January. Earlier Wednesday, the Defense Department confirmed to the military news outlet that Carrie Bingham, Principal Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, would step down. What are they saying? A Department of Defense spokesman told The Hill the service of longtime official Kadenow was appreciated and he wishes her well. Where are they going? Why are they leaving? So far, 55 of Trump's appointees have resigned for both reasons. Either to stay alive or have their families stay alive, or because they were guilty. Department of Defense spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Michael Andrews told the department was committed to the development and implementation of international cooperative programs and defense exportability efforts to foster cooperation with U.S. allies on research, blah, 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 blah. You won't pay any attention to that. It's an official statement. But the department will not provide anything further on this personal matter. People are leaving because the day of justice is coming. And the day of justice is something we, the American people, have been looking for quite some time. We want to see the arrests. We want to see the orange jumpsuits all linked together with chains. We want to see these people walked into court to face their charges by the American people. They stole money. They murdered people. They laundered money. They set up illegal organizations to launder money for their bosses. They're working for foreign entities. The day of justice is coming. In the next segment, we're going to talk about just how close this is going to get. Don't go away. More X Squared Radio coming at you right after this.
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. September 2018. Extendivite works in keeping my blood pressure in the normal range. I've been using Extendivite for many years now. May 2018. Great product. I use regularly and I rarely get sick. March 2018. This product has relieved what appeared to be angina pain in my chest and shortness of breath after climbing stairs. I'm quite happy about it. February 2018. My husband, son, and I have been using this product for a few months now, and we have noticed an improvement in our joints and blood pressure. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822, or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Hey, it's Grace. Can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at nature'syouth.com. nature'syouth.com. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
He was the deputy director of MI6, Britain's most senior diplomat. He was knighted by the Queen and in charge of thousands of highly trained spies. But he was also a member of the Paedophile Information Exchange. He had 45 diaries full of sex fantasies with children. His friend was the private secretary of Margaret Thatcher. He strangled a child and hit another with his car. He raped young boys and organized orgies with children for other politicians.
The Enigma Channel, intelligent television for planet Earth. EnigmaTV.com.
Real people, real radio.
Initiating the truth frequency.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
All right, welcome back, X Squared Radio. We're halfway through. All eyes are on Virginia tonight. But before we get started with that, I want to share with you, if you're making international calls and you have to get your friends to add the W app or the S app or the P app or the T app, please add that so I can call you for free. You sound cheap. You want to be in business and do business internationally. You want to call businesses. You want to call any phone number in the world from your cell phone for one fee. And believe me, it can run into some serious money if you're trying to buy, S minutes or use the W app. The connection is crappy and all your metadata is being shared. They sell it. What you need is WowieTel. WowieTel. Easy to do. Add it to your phone. Boom. You can make international calls unlimited for one fee each month. It is fantastic. WowieTel.com/ and use the promo code BA2019. And you can call anyone and they won't even know because you're going to have satellite clarity on your call. So why are all eyes on Virginia? You've probably seen a few articles come out about this, but I'm going to give you some insight as to why this is happening. You probably don't know this, but the former governor of Virginia was a man named Terry McAuliffe. Terry McAuliffe was the Clintonistas' bagman. When I was down in Mississippi working, Terry came down. Of course, he knew that electric vehicles were someday going to be a big thing. I was in the process of developing the Condor, which is the nation's first all-electric pickup truck. In fact, I own the domain electricpickuptruck.com. And the Condor is, I think, the most affordable, safest pickup truck ever built. In any case, Terry goes a few miles down the road and he makes a deal with the state of Mississippi for some EB5 money. EB5 is a program that is run by Hillary Clinton's brother out of Gulfport, Mississippi. What they do is they work with Chinese and the Chinese government, and they bring Chinese money into the United States to give to industrial startups. In exchange, the industrial startup is required to hire a certain number of Chinese nationals who, through the EB5 program, are put on a fast track to a green card and eventually citizenship. Believe me, thousands and thousands of Chinese came into the country under this program, and EB5 money was spread all over the country working with startup businesses. Couple of issues here. Over 75% of the money that came from China went through Gulfport capital with Hillary Rodham's brother. Terry McAuliffe got $5 million of this money that was supposed to go to the state of Mississippi to build a plant to build an electric car. Oh, Terry took pictures in the car, with his arm in the windowsill, smiling. And they never broke ground. They never mowed the grass. Terry McAuliffe put that $5 million in a suitcase, and he took it to Virginia, and he bought the governor's office with it. So he was governor of Virginia, and he passed, almost just by forcing it through, gun laws. One of the gun laws was to confiscate all the AR-15s in the state of Virginia from law-abiding gun owners. There were about 105,000 of them, 105,000 gun owners. Guess how many showed up with their AR-15s? None. It was a stalemate. Automatically, those 105,000 people, law-abiding citizens all, became fugitives from justice. They weren't allowed to show up in public with that AR-15. So now we're to the new governor. And they have just recently passed restrictive anti-gun legislation. It's supposed to go into effect in early 2020. It's a plan to deploy roadblocks at both the county and state levels to confiscate firearms from law-abiding citizens. The issue is that these are not soldiers. These are citizens in uniform working weekends as armored law enforcement under orders from the governor. National Guard. Remember what happened the last time this was put into effect? Well, let me refresh your memory. Governor Kate Brown ordered the premeditated murder of Lavoy Finicum and the attempted murder of 5 other Americans, all of whom were unarmed. The Second Amendment Foundation is applauding the 100-plus local governments in Virginia that have declared themselves sanctuaries for gun rights. They're Second Amendment sanctuary counties. Faced with increasing threats of restrictive gun control laws and even outright bans, activists working with local officials, including county sheriffs, have drawn the proverbial line in the sand. They've set an example for grassroots groups in other states to prevent the kind of gun control hysteria that now permeates legislatures in Richmond and Springfield. We stand with these counties in their defense of the Constitution against anti-rights extremism disguised as common sense. We remind gun-hating zealots everywhere this is still the United States, not a police state, and constitutional rights are not subject to popularity contests. On December 18, 2019, it was reported that 86 of Virginia's 95 counties were Second Amendment sanctuaries. The SAF also reports 67 counties in Illinois have also taken the same stand. Some might choose to dismiss such claims as speculation. This creates a situation where Virginia might become a flashpoint to take this cold civil war to a hot civil war, engineered by the global syndicate. Their end game is to unleash a sufficient amount of violence to call for UN occupation of America as part of the current overthrow of President Trump and the Republic. Such action may result in American gun owners being labeled as domestic terrorists. We've already heard the words. Such language is already being used by Democrat legislators in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The Democrat-run impeachment of President Trump is a necessary component for this plan, since the scheme requires Trump supporters to be painted as enraged domestic terrorists who seek revenge for the impeachment. This is how the media will spin the stories when armed Virginians stand their ground and refuse to have their legal firearms confiscated by police state goons running Fourth Amendment violating roadblocks on Virginia roads. It gets worse because the roadblocks are going to be set up in a way to expand the scope of this legislation. First of all, they're going to be set up on roads entering the Commonwealth of Virginia from neighboring states like Kentucky, like Tennessee, and like North Carolina. We have high gun ownership. We have concealed carry laws that are reciprocal with the state of Virginia. Number two is that means that they'll be confiscating weapons from North Carolinians, from Tennesseans, from Kentuckians that are passing into Virginia armed. And that means that this begins to expand the conflict. And the second is the main roads, the highways and interstates that enter into pro-Second Amendment counties, which have declared themselves to be Second Amendment sanctuaries, with over 90 Virginia counties now recognizing some sort of Second Amendment sanctuary status. Virtually the entire Commonwealth of Virginia will be covered, except for Springfield and Richmond. I mean, you look at this map. I'm going to leave it in my notes so you can look at it. You can always get to my notes by going to tfrlive.com/X2 Radio. That's what we are, X Squared Radio, X2 Radio. And click on the notes link at the bottom of any one of my more than 400 episodes on Truth Frequency radio network, because this is where the truth freaks hang out. And we are not afraid to let our truth freak flag fly. The purpose of the roadblocks, to repeat, has absolutely nothing to do with public safety or enforcing any law. It's all being set up to spark a violent uprising against the Virginia Democrats and whatever law enforcement goons are willing to go along with their unconstitutional demands. Democrats in Virginia have threatened to activate the National Guard to attack these pro-Second Amendment, quote, terrorists. And a recent statement by the National Guard unit in Virginia confirms that the Guard has no intention to resist Governor Northam's outrageous orders, even if they are illegal, even if they are unconstitutional. One county in Virginia, Tazewell, has already activated its own militia in response. I was in Tazewell not long ago. It's a good place to stop if you're getting gas right there. These are mostly well-trained citizens with no record of infractions or citations. So if you are a member of the National Guard, you do not have the right or the authority to question or search these people. You do not have probable cause. In addition to passing their Second Amendment sanctuary resolution, the county also passed a militia resolution. This resolution formalizes the creation and maintenance of a de facto civilian militia in the county of Tazewell. And to get a better understanding why the council members passed this resolution, Firearms News reached out to one of its members, Mr. Lester. Mr. Lester is a member of the council as well as a professor of American history and political science. Councilman Lester, what are the reasons behind passing the new resolution, and from what does it mean, and what does it mean for the people of Tazewell County? Here's what he said. The purpose of the militia is not just to protect the county from domestic danger, but also protect the county from any sort of tyrannical actions from the federal government. Our Constitution is designed to allow them to use an armed militia as needed. If the federal government takes those arms away, it prevents the county from fulfilling their constitutional duties. The situation is escalating rapidly in Virginia. You watch it. You watch it tomorrow. You watch it the next day. It is precisely what Democrats and globalists are seeking. With many Virginia citizens angry with the threat of tyranny exploding there, there was an email that was forwarded by a very concerned Virginia citizen who warned that Democrat leadership is pushing Virginia there towards another shot heard round the world. With Virginia absolutely the satanic globalists' new testing ground for disarming all of America in a similar fashion, they should be successful there, or should they be successful there? And while we'll continue to pray for peace in America, it's been long argued that it's better to go down fighting than to be a slave to tyranny for the rest of one's life. And with gun registration seemingly always preceding disarmament, and disarmament historically leading to genocide, everybody's eyes should be on what's happening now in Virginia. With the mainstream media clearly the enemy of the American people, and now President Trump confirming they are partners in crime with the deep state that has been attempting an illegal coup upon President Trump ever since he got into office, how can such outlets like CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and all of the others continuously pushing the globalist satanic propaganda be held accountable and responsible for the outright madness they are unleashing upon America? The enemies of America want to turn the entire country into a UN-occupied war zone and declare President Trump to be an illegitimate dictator. So where is all this really headed? The enemies of America intend to transform the country into a UN-occupied war zone where, UN troops go door to door, confiscating weapons from the American people. President Trump will be declared an illegitimate dictator and accused of war crimes, since Democrats and the media have already proven they can dream up any crime they want and accuse the president of that crime without any basis in fact. And as we know with the Democrats, if they can't rule America, then they will seek to destroy America. Causing total chaos is their next best option to resisting Trump's efforts to drain the swamp. Since the Dems know they can't defeat Trump in an honest election. So I'm telling you, Earth Explorers, all eyes on Virginia. It's the ignition point for all of this. Even the undercover cops who work there are now warning about what's coming. Virginia's Democrat politicians appear to be ready to drive the state into a period of massive civil unrest with no regard for citizens' wishes. But conservatives in the Commonwealth will not be stripped of their rights without a fight. In the face of expected wide-reaching bans on the so-called assault weapons, high-capacity magazines, and other arms protected under the Second Amendment, Virginians are standing up to the Democrats' tyranny. A major in the Marine Corps Reserves took an opportunity during a December 3rd meeting to warn the Board of Supervisors of Fairfax County about trouble on the horizon. Ben Joseph Woods spoke about this time in the military, his federal law enforcement career, and his fears about where politicians are taking Virginia. Here's what he said. I work plainclothes law enforcement. I walk around without a uniform. People don't see my badge. People don't see my gun. And I can tell you, people are pissed. Woods said that the situation in Virginia is becoming so dangerous that he is close to moving his own wife and unborn child out of the state. The reason is because my fellow law enforcement officers, I've heard on more than one occasion, tell me how they would not enforce these bills regardless of whether they believe in them ideologically, because they believe that there are so many people that are mad in gun shops, gun shows, at bars. We've heard it now. People talking about tarring and feathering politicians in a less than joking manner. As Woods mentioned, politicians themselves could very well be in danger because of their decisions. Several rebel yells broke out as the crowd cheered him on. You stay informed. Things are about to happen over the next 10 months that you would never have imagined just 5 years ago. And to all those who mocked our warnings about the coming civil war, you are about to find yourself in one. Sure hope you know how to run an AR platform and build a water filter. Things won't go well for the unprepared, especially in the cities. And by the way, Richmond is surrounded by patriots. Not 1 square inch of American soil will ever be occupied by anyone in the UN. Is that understood? Not 1 square inch. Want to change the subject? Let's talk about the Starliner. Boeing's first Starliner spacecraft, built to fly astronauts, had to return to Earth in a pre-dawn landing today. It's still historic, but the test flight was due to a timing error. The uncrewed Starliner landed in the chilly desert of White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico at 7:58 this morning. That was probably an hour and 15 minutes after I got up. making history as the first crew-capable space capsule ever to make a land-based touchdown on U.S. soil. The landing capped a 3-day orbital test flight mission that began with a launch Friday. Watching the landing was a thing of beauty today, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine told Boeing and NASA flight controllers at Mission Control in Houston. But the problem was that the Starliner, it did reach 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, that's a little warm. As it plunged through Earth's atmosphere at Mach 25, it jettisoned that heat shield after its parachutes deployed. The spacecraft cushioned its landing with 6 airbags, touched down at about 19 miles an hour. NASA and Boeing watched the spacecraft from the ground and air using infrared cameras. But the problem was that it was originally scheduled to spend 8 days in orbit, flying an automated mission to the International Space Station and returning to Earth to demonstrate the vehicle's readiness to ferry astronauts for NASA. But a mission clock error during launch prevented Starliner from reaching its intended orbit and continuing on to the space station. According to Boeing, Starliner's mission clock thought the spacecraft was in a different later phase of the flight for an as yet unknown reason. No, it didn't time travel. It's just a clock error, right? Boeing was able to reset the clock, but not before it used too much propellant to fly to the station. Instead, Starliner entered a stable orbit of 155 miles, circled Earth 33 times, and performed as many tests as possible to shake down the systems for future crewed flights. While Boeing aced many of its demonstrations for NASA on this flight, it was not able to show Starliner's ability to dock itself at the International Space Station. That's kind of critical if you're going to take people up to the space station. The crew for that first Starliner to carry astronauts was on hand for its smooth landing Sunday. They were not in it. 3 parachutes, 6 airbags, and a beautiful soft landing. Can't wait to try it out. That's the Starliner story. This particular Starliner will fly on Boeing's second crewed flight, which will be NASA's first operational flight to the station. It was really unbelievable. It was picture perfect. Everything worked. She's back. She's home, they said. It's an interesting story, and it kind of couples with another story that I have about UFOs over nuclear-powered vessels. I find this to be pretty fascinating because 2 years ago today, the New York Times broke the stunning story of a secret Pentagon program to study unidentified flying objects. The story leads into this strange world about interesting stuff about UFOs, and it's all, very official. The government makes it very hard to figure out what and where UFO-related stuff is going on. Is that because the government is behind some great conspiracy to cover up the proof of alien visitations to Earth? My friend Jordan Sather would say, hell yes. It's because the government is in cahoots with alien species to create human-alien hybrids. Maybe. But what I really believe is going on here is that the few individuals in the U.S. government who know about this issue believe the phenomenon might be a threat. Because it's our airspace, it's our world, and that they don't know how to deal with this. So, what is behind the government's fear? Well, yes, it's our airspace, and we'd like to know what's flying in it. And when you hail something that's flying up there at Mach 8, Mach 10, Mach 15, and then makes a left-hand turn, you want to know who built it. But the other issue is, relative to this story, it's the nuclear issue. If you ask a Pentagon representative about a specific UFO incident, you'll get a boring response like, let's see, our aviators train as they fight. Any intrusions that may compromise the security of our operations, tactics, or procedures is of great concern. As the investigation of unidentified aerial phenomenon sightings is ongoing, we will not discuss individual sighting reports or observations. Well, we will as soon as we get back at the top of the hour. More America Free Radio coming at you right after these messages.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like The Christopher Everard Show, The Covert Report with Susan Lindauer, Enemy Within Radio with Tom Barnes, Freaky Friday with The Woo Crew, The Gematria Effect with Zachary Hubbard, America's Evil Genius with Travis Cook, Phoenix Rising Radio with Phoenix, Quantum Connections with Lucky, and dozens more. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117 or call into your favorite show toll free at 833-TFR-LIVE. Uncensored talk and news you won't hear in the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
The Christmas forecast. Campaigning Democrats. I'm Evan Haining. Well, the day started with a nearly 70-car pileup near Williamsburg, Virginia because of fog and ice, and more rain is forecast tonight and tomorrow. The National Weather Service meteorologist Mark Chenard expects improved conditions Tuesday and Wednesday.
Most of the impacts with that will be across the Carolinas, and that will be mainly Monday and Monday night. As after that, it dries out. Much of the central and east will be dry through Christmas Day. We do have another system in the west that's bringing some rain to California today. That system weakens as we go over the next couple of days, but there'll still be some rain and mountain snow across the western U.S., but at this point it doesn't look too significant through Christmas Day.
Democratic presidential hopeful Senator Amy Klobuchar told CNN State of the Union she'd like to hear Mike Duffy, the White House official whose emails show the Pentagon was told to freeze military aid to Ukraine, to appear when President Trump's impeachment trial goes to the Senate.
After the president made that critical call to the Ukrainian president, this guy sent an email. I have it here. We just found it. It says, given the sensitive nature of the request, I appreciate your keeping this information closely held. And he said, don't release any of the funds. This man should testify.
Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg were in Iowa. Senator Elizabeth Warren campaigned in Oklahoma today. There's a beef recall you should know about. Correspondent Jeff McKay reports.
The Department of Agriculture's Food Safety and Inspection Service put out the warning about 16,000 pounds of beef produced by Cincinnati-based Advanced Pierre Foods. Now, this beef isn't found in the frozen foods section of a supermarket. It was shipped from a warehouse in Iowa to institutions, including schools, and may contain small, green, soft plastic.
A similar report led to a recall of more than 20,000 pounds of patties in April. I'm Evan Haining.
Into the truth frequency. Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
have you all back. YouTube Live, YouTubers out there, and also TFR people listening on TFRlive.com. The phone number is still live if you want to call in. I just checked the call boards. I didn't see anybody there, so that's fine. No problem. I was kind of trying to keep up with the chat room during the break. Dolores says we're in a lot of good stuff. There's a book out there that's called Selected by Extraterrestrials. It's written by William Mills Tompkins, and it's evidently he was killed shortly after publishing the book. So the book is still out there. If you want to pick it up on Amazon, give it a read and let me know about it. MacGyver always has good stuff, and I have a Kirk. Is out there as well. He says, hi, Dr. Agnew. I've just recognized you out there. Alan, always good to see you out there. Free message. Terry, I appreciate MG, all of these comments coming in. Awakening. Too many to go through. There are hundreds and hundreds of them. But I wish they would transfer over when YouTube posts this. I wish all of this chat would go with it, but it's all dropped. You have to start all over again with your comments. That's why you need to be here live with this sharp community. So we're talking a little bit this hour about UFOs, and we realize that UFOs are there. I mean, there are hardly anybody you can talk to in any country in the world that doesn't have first or secondhand knowledge about an unidentified flying object either coming across the sky or coming out of the sea. But so far, that real big first contact hasn't occurred. And I understand books like Selected by Extraterrestrials. But what about those of us that were selected to come here? Yes, we probably volunteered. But I strongly believe that in every generation, there are a few special souls that come here that are highly capable, and they're able to affect the universe in very powerful ways. Some of them are very, very powerful. Some of these individuals never get to make their effect. Born in slavery, born poor, end up with the inability to get along with society well enough to be able to, get a job or earn a living or have any way to get their word out. A Da Vinci today would probably be buried in some R&D division of a major factory or a major company somewhere in the world. We would never know their name. They would never be able to make their changes that they came here to make. Some of us are a little more vocal. We're able to keep it together long enough to make the transition to human life and be able to bring a message forward that other humans listen to. But the government's assessment of all this, though they're not going to admit it, is that UFOs are popping up near these aircraft carriers, nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, due to those carriers having nuclear power plants on them. Now, you note also that UFOs also like to pop up near nuclear submarines and Air Force nuclear weapons bases. And we now recognize that this paradigm has been occurring for a long, long time, since the Manhattan Project, all the way to Los Alamos, New Mexico, and also at nuclear sites in the Soviet Union and in Russia. Oh, and as Robert Hastings documents, these UFOs have sometimes even temporarily shut down U.S. nuclear weapons systems. You remember that? Robert Salas, Colonel Robert Salas, came on this program and told us about that. Well, just think about it. The modern UFO phenomenon really gets going at exactly the same time as the Manhattan Project. Has humanity's perfection of nuclear energy piqued someone or something's curiosity in us? Kind of like in Star Trek when we made that first warp signature. The passing Vulcans picked up that warp signature and they came to Earth to make that first contact. It was just a movie. But the fact that we've been able to split the atom and now cause fusion to occur takes us from sticks and stones and kinetic weapons to something much more dangerous. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not to say these UFOs are hostile, although it must be noted that the diverging shapes, behaviors, and capability patterns of UFOs suggest more than one originating source, right? They're long, they're skinny, they're flat, they're egg-shaped, defying all the laws of physics. They phase in and phase out. They're big, they're small. They have all kinds of different capabilities, it appears. The ones that I photographed up at James Gilliland's were really not in focus, even though the mount was perfectly clear. We had a 14 megapixel camera and a 10 megapixel camera taking the pictures at the same time, and this shape showed up in both cameras. It was 500 feet long. Yeah, it was cigar shaped, 500 feet long, but it didn't have real crisp edges. They were all kind of fuzzy, like it was phasing or trying to cloak itself or something. But our eyes, we couldn't see it. The frequency that it was sitting there vibrating at, the naked eye could not see it. But the digital chip can pick up much higher and much lower wavelengths of light. It showed up in the cameras in daylight. And we didn't have to shoot an infrared to see this. It was the regular digital cameras picked it up in the same spot, 2 different cameras shooting at the same time. It was a really good experiment. But it's clear that this ship is not just there, being hostile. We didn't get that feeling from it. We didn't see that kind of movement from it. On the contrary, these UFOs appear to be quite friendly, except, when we're trying to shoot them down. But, pretend you're a senior military or intelligence officer. You see the nuclear connection point, and you're struck by something odd going on. Now, add to the nuclear issue that some UFOs are intelligently operated machines capable of instantaneously reaching hypersonic speeds. Oh, and they're also anti-gravity and invisibility capable, and they have been tracked moving in and out of Earth orbit, the atmosphere, and underwater. And suddenly, you have something that is making the U.S. military's most advanced capabilities and those of every other military on the Earth look like an absurd joke in comparison. You're left with an F-18 pilot who's flying as hard as he can push that jet, and an egg-shaped craft is at very low altitude right off the water, moving away from him at speeds that he cannot match. It's the best of the best. It's the best we have. You're left with an unpleasant conclusion. If whatever is controlling these things does turn harmful, there ain't nothing we can do about it. And that's where the military gets nervous. Just like in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, they automatically assume that it has to be a military response. I mean, you got to put yourself in the military officer's shoes. Something is repeatedly shown it can easily find carrier strike groups, which are designed and operated to be hidden in the far oceans, and to find nuclear ballistic missile submarines running near totally silent, deep underwater. Something can penetrate the most securely guarded areas of the most important areas in the U.S. military and render our most critical deterrent platforms totally useless. For Pentagon planners, this is Armageddon level stuff here. But the truth is very clear. If these UFOs wanted to, something strange like this could defeat America without even raising a sweat. The extension is that even if the U.S. government believes, as it does, that these UFOs aren't Chinese and they're not Russian, they're not Indian, they're not Mexican, publicizing the issue itself risks another danger. Namely, that if the U.S. shares what it knows about UFOs, China or Russia, the Russian government has long been very, very interested in UFOs, as has the German government. They might learn enough to replicate the associated technologies behind UFOs for themselves. And seeing as those technologies are almost certainly built around space-time manipulation, if Beijing or Moscow figures it out before the US does, we have an even bigger problem. In other words, I guess it's okay if the technology is in the hands of off-worlders or ultra-terrestrials. But when it gets in the hands of other humans, we have ourselves a serious, serious problem. This isn't to say that the U.S. government is sitting idle. Whatever one thinks about the claims of those such as, Bob Lazar or all these, people that have made a living off of this. He says he worked on a crashed UFO at Area 51. I'm not convinced of the story. I've never met the man. I can't call him out. I'm just saying, to make a living off of going public like that, the goods, and the others out there that are making a lot of money. We make nothing here, nothing. I do this as a hobby. I sell a few of my books because I'm an author. Yes, I'm a scientist and I'm an engineer, and I can tell you, if I have facts, if I have something measurable and repeatable and reliable, I'm right behind it, 100%, no problem. But I have seen nothing, no evidence whatsoever of that we possess anti-gravity drive or we've ever been to Mars or any of that. Yes, I've heard the stories. I can't discount them because they're direct observations, but they're unvalidated. So I'm just saying we can't count on the military to share more of what it knows anytime soon. Disclosure, it would be a disaster. Not to you, but if they disclose something and it's a missing piece for some nation that doesn't like us, they now have something that can make a left-hand turn at 10,000 miles an hour. We have a real problem, Houston. Their understanding of the phenomenon and professional instincts weighs heavily toward more secrecy and not less. Now, President Trump has admitted that he's been briefed on the UFOs, and Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama likely were too. Interestingly, when asked about it, both former presidents jumped to joking non-denials. But seeing as they have few good answers, they likely believe there's no point in scaring folks and scaring social norms about crazy things like aliens or UFOs. So where does this leave us? That's an interesting question. Because we're going to need to keep pushing the issue, and we will. I'm going to be at Contact in the Desert in May, and you can be there with me. You want to find out where I'm going to be? It's super, super simple. All you have to do is go to brooksagnew.com. Everything I'm doing is there. All the public appearances, all the webinars, all my writing, all my books, everything is there. brooksagnew.com. Super simple to do. In the 15 years since Chad Underwood recorded a bizarre and erratic UFO, now called the Tic Tac, a name Underwood himself came up with. From the infrared camera on the left wing of his F-18 Super Hornet, he's become a flight instructor, a civilian employee in the aerospace industry, and a father. But he has not yet spoken publicly about what he saw that day. Even now, 2 years after his video made the front page of the New York Times, As he explained before speaking with Intelligencer, Underwood has mostly wanted to avoid having his name attached to little green men and crazies that are out there. The story of the Tic Tac begins around November 10th, 2004, when radar operator Kevin Day first spotted or reported seeing odd and slow-moving objects flying in groups of 5 to 10 off San Clemente Island west of the San Diego coast, at an elevation of 28,000 feet, moving at approximately 120 miles an hour, or about 138 miles an hour. The clusters were way too high to be birds, too slow to be conventional aircraft, and were not traveling on any established flight path. In a military report made public by KLAS TV in Las Vegas, Day would later observe that the objects exhibited ballistic missile characteristics as they zoomed from 60,000 feet to 50 feet above the Pacific Ocean, alarmingly, without producing sonic booms. All told, radar operators with the Princeton spent about 2 weeks attempting to figure out what the objects were, a process that included having the ship's radar system shut down and recalibrated to make sure that the mysterious radar returns were not false positives or ghost tracks. Eventually, David Fravor, commanding officer of the Black Aces, made visual confirmation of one of the objects mid-air during a flight training exercise. An hour later, Underwood made his infrared recording on a second flight. That day, Underwood recalls, Dave Fravor was like, "Hey, dude, Bolo. Like, be on the lookout for just something weird." I can't remember the exact terms that he used. I didn't think much about it at the time. But once I was able to acquire it on the radar and on the FLR, that's the forward-looking infrared camera, that's kind of where things, I would say, went sideways. Things were just different. The footage appears to depict what Fravor had identified as a 40-foot-long white oblong shape, hence Tic Tac, hovering somewhere between 15,000 and 24,000 feet in midair and exhibiting no notable exhaust from conventional propulsion sources, even as it makes a surprising dart leftward in the video's final moments. Of the 3 UFO incidents captured by U.S. Navy airmen via infrared gun camera pods, Underwood's footage remains unique for its lack of crosstalk between the pilots, a fact that has led to some speculation about its authenticity. But there wasn't anything on it that was protected. Underwood's retired former commanding officer, Dave Fravor, told Intelligence the missing audio, he says, just didn't make the copy that was taken from the storage drive. A former fighter pilot who served on the Nimitz in 2004, who spoke to Intelligencer on condition of anonymity, recalls an exhilarating group screening of the FLIR-1 video inside the Nimitz's carrier vehicle intelligence center. Debriefs were usually pro forma in the Civic, but this one in particular was so odd, the former pilot said. There weren't really a lot of skeptics in that room. Years later, Fravor told ABC News that he didn't know what the Tic Tac was, but that it was really impressive. It was really fast, and I would like to fly it. The anonymous pilot said, "We all had that. We all wanted to fly it." Pretty cool. Pretty firsthand. Some say it was the beginning of serious disclosure. We all want to know, we all want to see, but maybe sometimes we don't know what we want to see. I will say this. UFOs exist. 100%, absolutely. But they are as present as they want to be. If they wanted to be more present, they would be. Maybe there are rules. Maybe they have some kind of prime directive that they just can't come out and say, look, here's what you're doing wrong. Here's how to make your jets make this turn. Because they already know the reason our jets are up there. Our jets are up there to train kids how to kill other kids. And that's the whole reason why we don't get this technology. When we turn back into the explorer race we were born to be, then we'll make the jump to the stars. By the way, if you come to Contact in the Desert, you're going to see my presentation on asteroid mining. Oh, you've never seen anything like this before. It's going to be good. Good news for schools. President Trump signed an executive order Wednesday of this week to start pulling the federal government out of K through 12 education. That's another campaign promise. The order, dubbed the Education Federalism Executive Order, will launch a 300-day review of Obama-era regulations and guidance for school districts and directs Education Secretary Betsy DeVos to modify or repeal measures she deems an overreach by the federal government. For too long, the government has imposed its will on state and local governments. The result has been education that spends more and achieves far, far less. Mr. Trump said, my administration has been working to reverse this federal power grab and give power back to families, back to the cities, back to the states, and back to the local school boards. He said that previous administrations had increasingly forced schools to comply with whims and dictates from Washington, but his administration would break the trend. We know local communities know it best and do it best. The time has come to empower teachers and parents to make the decisions to help their students achieve success. And here's the deal. When local school boards make the choice as to what textbook they're going to have in their classrooms and what their teachers are going to teach, the textbook writers and publishers have to create a variety of textbooks in order to compete when these school boards select those textbooks. They're going to be selected based upon that school board. And as a former member of a school board, I can tell you that some crazy textbooks are proposed out there. Now, this was a long time ago, but it's probably not that bad now in the sense that you don't have much choice. Why? Because all of the textbooks are crafted to pass the federal test. Because the school is graded on how well the students do on that federal test. So there's no competition, there's no innovation. And whatever the government, the federal government's guideline is for that history, for that social study, for that gender consideration, that's what the class has to take. And what happens is you create a federally indoctrinated generation. Are we seeing it? Am I lying? If I'm lying, I'm dying. I'm telling you. The kids in school today need to be re-educated. Most of them are at home. My kids were. My friends' kids were. They didn't come out of schools all screwed up like some of these kids are coming out. Greta and kids like that. They're not coming out like that. But some are. In fact, a dangerously alarming number of them are coming out that way. They actually believe socialism is a good thing. They actually believe that Medicare for all is a good thing, that private home ownership is a bad thing, that there should be no such thing as millionaires and billionaires. Only the government should be rich, and we shouldn't have to pay for anything. See how stupid that sounds? You realize how insane that sounds? Yes, you do, but you hear it all the time. All right, in the coming hour, this is the final hour of X Squared Radio on the America Free Radio studio. I'm going to talk about my Christmas message. I don't have any notes for this. This just comes straight from the heart. So if you're interested in hearing it, you can hang around. You YouTubers are totally welcome to hang out. And I promise it'll be a perspective that you haven't had before. It's not scripted. Yes, I will use the gospel. I will use scripture. But it is designed to connect you with something. Because there's something that we should learn from this. I'm going to go from that point all the way up to the time when he returns to Jerusalem. I'll cover that in March. In April, when we go to the Easter story. Then I will cover what happens after he arrives in Jerusalem until the resurrection. I promise you have not heard this before. So we'll take a quick break. Let me take a drink, and we'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
It's amazing how people have been raving about iAlife all over Facebook. They've been posting their testimonials just because they want to get the word out because it's worked so well for them. If you're not familiar with iAlife, it's a 99% pure CBD oil, but the secret is the synergy between the hemp and the ayahuasca vine, the non-psychoactive component of the ayahuasca tea. We recently received an email from a wife whose husband has Parkinson's. For the first time, he's been able to sleep through the entire night. Another customer reported that they're no longer using NSAIDs because their tennis elbow has been relieved with iAlife. The reports have been phenomenal and much more than we ever expected. Everyone should have access to this. That's why if you head on over to iAlife.com right now and use coupon code TFR, we'll give you $5 towards your order. And we'll even ship it worldwide. That's iAlife.com, AYA life.com.
Hey folks, guess what the #1 phrase that Life Change Tea receives by email? You ready? We love this tea. We love this tea. Time after time, week after week, we love this tea. Life Change Tea gives you more energy, a beautiful cleansing, and fulfills its slogan perfectly. The tea that makes you go. So if you want to be on your health game, log on to getthetea.com and order Life Change Super Strength Tea. Packages come in a 1-month supply, and when you brew this stuff, wait until you see the results. Aren't we all about the results? And with a lot of people's health struggling, we can use a little bit of help. Doctors will tell you disease starts in the gut. So log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Be our next email saying, I love this tea. I love this tea. Get the tea at getthetea.com. Helping America one tea bag at a time.
He was the deputy director of MI6, Britain's most senior diplomat. He was knighted by the Queen and in charge of thousands of highly trained spies. But he was also a member of the Paedophile Information Exchange. He had 45 diaries full of sex fantasies with children. His friend was the private secretary of Margaret Thatcher. He strangled a child and hit another with his car. He raped young boys and organized orgies with children for other politicians.
The Enigma Channel, intelligent television for planet Earth. EnigmaTV.com.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
No hate, no hype, no fear. Real people, real radio.
I've been waiting for this moment since my first breath in. Never would have thought I'd be afraid to begin, but here I am, the edge of the water, wondering if I can swim. Never seem to notice all the days pass through, but in this final moment, I'm still chasing the truth. I want an explanation why I can't stay here forever in my youth.
Thank you so much for being with me for 2019. It's been an amazing year of light. No question about it. We cranked it up all over the world. Next year is going to be a different kind of year. Yeah, we have one more extra day because of February 29th, but it's the year of action. It means we got to get off the porch. Got to get busy. If you don't know how, if you lost the steps from your porch, get a hold of me. My email address is bagnew@x2-radio.com. bagnew@x2-radio.com. You want to follow? We're putting out regular newsletters now, thanks to my great assistant. Go to brooksagnew.com, brooksagnew.com. Get all that information. Yes, Leslie, it's about time for a spirit fix. You know, when creations happen, this intelligence is injected into the void and a universe is established. Certain rules, mathematical rules of resonance and the golden mean only makes this type of universe possible. So there aren't any, weird universes with different rules than this one has. We sat around one night and talked about that through just about an entire bottle of scotch, and we came up with that for sure. This is the only kind of universe that can form. But it doesn't form on its own. Some intelligent energy is put into it. It's put into it for a reason and not for entertainment, not to just see energy become third-dimensional matter, but to create an environment, to create a theater, to create a way for spirits, timeless, eternal spirits, to have a mortal experience, to become so linked to the flesh that we really feel pain. I mean, yes, the body sends pain signals to the brain. This biological transducer is quite amazing. It's capable of some amazing things when it works correctly. It has a lot of problems. They have defects from time to time, yes, but disease, toxins, all kinds of things make us subject to a short mortal lifespan compared to our spirit. But it is so important that we have this mortal experience, and you should never, ever discount it. The pain that you feel, the frustration, the scarcity, the challenges that you feel are all by design, not someone else's design, yours. You're the one that set this up. You're the one that chose to come here. And yes, you could have been chosen as well, because there are many worlds, many worlds. The most important thing to keep in mind is that among these many worlds, there are opportunities to have mortal experiences. Some of them are primitive, some of them are advanced, some of them are in terrible conditions, inside worlds or in worlds that are undergoing very unstable conditions, extreme conditions, where the DNA that is normally asleep in us is awakened in those other existences, and we're able to express those genetic needs in order to survive on those planets. But you're here now with me in this time and maybe other times. Point is that we're individual soul addresses. Each individual one of us is unique. We are the mathematical derivative of another intelligence, ultimately a single intelligence. In the beginning, there were many great souls because the numbers were huge. The values of the spirits were enormous, but as each time they took the square root of themselves to create more and more and more, the size, the variety of the souls became asymptotic. That is to say, the difference in stature, in age, in ability, and capability was pretty much the same, even though we're individual soul addresses. And among that population, which probably is very large in this creation, in the trillions at least. There's only one who is the Christ. And how did that happen? Why did that happen? Because in this creation, from time to time, it becomes necessary to establish pathways from this dimension into the other dimensions in order for the souls to complete the circuit. We start out in one big population, disembodied, and we begin our mortal experiences. Each time we go through this, the process is the same. A couple is sent to the planet. The couple has a child. That child is imbued with the next spirit, and then the next, and the next, and then the breeding begins, and the population replenishes that planet. Did you ever find it odd in the creation where God commands man and woman to multiply and replenish the earth? If it was the first time, why would they be replenishing the earth? They'd be plenishing it, right? They'd be populating it for the first time, but they weren't. There have been many zeniths of humans on this planet, or human-like creatures. Some of you already know that you came from another world. You don't feel at home here. You didn't for a long time, maybe out of step, out of sync, because your soul lived a mortal experience on another world. And now you're here having a mortal experience. It's different pressure, it's different light, it's a different length of day, it's different social structures. We're exposed to the seat of Lucifer open in front of us, which we have not been exposed to in other worlds. But you chose to come here for this time on this world because something was going to occur on this world that didn't occur on other worlds. It was only a rumor, it was only a legend, it was only not a myth, but it was something that populations had to believe in. They had to have faith in, incredible faith. This world would be driven barren by the seed of Lucifer. Genocide, slavery, government oppression, death, disease, poverty for thousands of years. It would be a tough place. Average lifespan would be about 39 years old. Barely enough time to have a mortal experience. Barely enough time to have a family, and while they're still young, you die. It was a very hard time. And the earth was cursed to going in that direction forever because the governments and armies had become so powerful that they ruled the world exactly as Lucifer had promised in the Garden of Eden. He said, with that enmity, I will take armies and navies and I will reign with blood and horror on the earth. And he did. And he did. And he's still doing it. But something was going to occur on this world that didn't happen on other worlds. That Jesus would be sent here to be born to establish that pathway back. He would be the Savior. He was born here on this world, not other worlds. We don't have to have faith that he was born on other worlds. He was born here. The best soul in the universe came here. The best souls in the universe come here, like you. In this time, in this day, when we can do what we're doing right now, we can communicate across space and time instantaneously. But something had to be established. And so he came through the lineage of Mary, 14 generations in the house of David. Same with Joseph. Although Joseph would be ostensibly the stepfather, they would travel because they were gainfully employed, a carpentry family. And a carpenter in those days was very necessary in any community. Yeah, you built chairs and tables and houses, but also bridges and other things, all built by carpenters. See, in those days, people that can do stuff, they're very important. Today, we have Amazon. You don't have to be able to know how to do anything. You want to know how to do something, just go to YouTube. You can get trained immediately, and you can do it yourself. But in those days, they didn't have that. In those days, you had to have a skill. And if you had that skill, you were valuable. If you were good at it, you were even more valuable. And so Joseph and Mary had to pay taxes. But in order to pay taxes, the way the Romans had set it up, you don't just pay taxes, where you are. They were living in Galilee at the time. No. You got to go to the city that you're assigned to. And they were assigned to Bethlehem. So they traveled to Bethlehem by caravan. That's the way everybody traveled in those days. It was the only safe way to travel, because if you traveled alone, you were toast. Just the way you are today in that region. If you travel alone, you're toast. You don't need a caravan, but you do need to travel on a bus or with a group. Don't travel alone in the Middle East. You're going to get killed. It's been the same for thousands and thousands of years. So they find themselves in Bethlehem, and she is great with child. My guess is, if they're paying taxes, it's somewhere in April or May, when the season first comes in, firstlings of the flock, the first seeds, those kinds of things are what you pay your taxes with to the Romans. And that stuff would be sent off to pay for Rome's occupation of everywhere. Same as it's done today. And they arrived in Bethlehem, and guess what? Yeah, everybody else had exactly the same idea. Let's go to Bethlehem. Well, the trouble is that in those days, they didn't have tourist accommodations like they do now. Now, if you come to Charlotte, every hotel room in the entire city can sell out during NCAA or, something like that. Everyone in Concord's going to sell out during the NASCAR races. But at tax time, that's everybody. There were no hotels. By the time they got there, no room in the inn. So they were put up in a manger. In those days in Bethlehem, a manger was not a shack. It was a cave. People that had small flocks of goats or sheep or whatever, in order to keep them safe from wolves and thieves, they would put them in a cave, and they put a guard at the front of the cave or a gate of some kind, and that's how they kept safe. So that's where Joseph and Mary went. It was humble, but it was safe, and it could be made warm in the early spring. And so during the time that they were there paying their taxes, Mary gives birth to Jesus. Now, Jesus is a very special child. Everybody knows this. Everything is quiet. Everything is quiet. Everything is fine. They have the baby. Everything's cool. They don't want to travel with a newborn, so they stay in Bethlehem. About a year and a half later, 3 travelers arrive in Bethlehem from afar. They bring gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And they're looking for this Christ child. Well, difficult to do in the city of Bethlehem. They don't know the language very well. They have their camel. They have their people along with them, their entourage, because you don't travel alone in the desert. And these ostensibly were kings. But, in that area, there are a lot of kings. There are a lot of sultans. There are a lot of princes. But that doesn't mean they command an army. It just means that they have the birthright. So they show up looking for the Christ child, which they saw the star along with everybody else in the world. And they thought, well, let's go pay homage to this new king, this savior. They can't find him anywhere. And so they went to information. Where was information? Well, the king, of course, King Herod. So they go to information at King Herod. Hi, here we are. We're kings from the east, and we're here to find the Christ child, the new king of the Jews. And Herod says, come again? What was that? King of what? Because, you know, like, I'm the governor here, right? I'm Herod, and this is kind of my place, and I'm running everything, and you come in here and say that there's a new king of the Jews. I'm a little concerned. Let me bring my priests in. So he brings the priests in. The priests say, yeah, about a year and a half ago there was a star, and according to these ancient records that we have here, we don't have them, but they had them. Well, according to these ancient records, a star will herald the birth of the king of the Jews, and that star did in fact occur. But we haven't heard anything. We don't know anything about this. But it is true. And so Herod says, I'll tell you what. Here's what I'm going to do. You go and you find this king, and you bring me back the knowledge of where he is, his exact location, because I want to pay homage to him as well. And so the three kings left. Of course, they perceived the wickedness in Herod's heart. And as they were leaving, I'm sure they were saying, we're not telling him nothing. If we find him, we're keeping it to ourselves. But they did find him. They did find Jesus, and they did find Joseph and Mary, and they did give them gifts, gold, frankincense, myrrh. Kind of handy to have when you're a small family, these kinds of gifts. And then the kings went their merry way. Well, about 3-4 months went by. They're on into the summer now. It's kind of crazy. Herod gets with the priest. Listen, did you hear anything back from those kings, those guys that came here? No, I never heard anything. But the prophecy is true that he's going to rise up and he's going to save everybody. And we don't really exactly know what that means, but could be save everyone from us. He could lead a revolution. And so Herod said, well, let's do this then. Get the soldiers together. And let's go down to Bethlehem and let's just kill all the boys 2 years and younger. Just get them all. And if we get them all, then we'll take care of it. We'll head off this prophecy. And so the good Roman soldier said, "You got it, boss." So they rode to Bethlehem. They went door to door. They hauled every male child under the age of 2 out and stabbed it right there in the streets. Oh, the weeping and the wailing. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But right before this happens, Joseph and Mary get a feeling that what the kings had told them was true. That they had a bad feeling about this meeting with Herod, and that it was time for them to leave town. You got gold, you got frankincense, you got myrrh, you can travel. You can go anywhere you want. And so they decide to go to Egypt. And when they traveled to Egypt, they avoided the genocide that occurred by Herod's guards, by his Roman soldiers. As it turns out, Jesus went to a city called Abydos. Abydos in Egypt is quite a remarkable place. King Seti had built a temple there to cover or to celebrate the life of Osiris. Osiris had a wife whose name was Isis. Now, Osiris is killed in terrible fashion, and he is dismembered, and all of his body parts are scattered around the country, including his Johnson. Isis is just heartbroken, but she's also a very powerful being. So after a time, she has all of his body parts found and recovered and brought back to Abydos. And what they did is they resurrected Osiris. Osiris was brought back to life. So Seti decided to, well, I don't know if that actually happened in Abydos, but that happened. Seti decides to build his temple to pay homage to this, but he wants to build it in a special place. So he sends his engineers out to find an even more ancient site called the Osirian. And the Osirian has the sand has long since covered it. But the engineers end up finding it through ancient records, and they dig down and they find the Osirian. The Osirian is an amazing place that the technology that it took to build it is crazy off the chain with what they were able to do with granite. But it also was a spring and it had water. And so Seti had the Osirian exhumed and then built his temple right on top of it. Yes, to capitalize on that power. And each year that this temple was in operation, they celebrated the Passion Play of Osiris, the resurrection of Osiris. Jesus, living there as a young boy, was able to see this parade and this Passion Play every single year until he was about 14 years old. He knew the Passion Play inside and out, knew every aspect of it. Now, ostensibly what happened is Jesus left Abydos and he went traveling to the east. And he went to the east, he learned from other ancient masters. Meditation, about stars, about medicine, about all kinds of stuff. But he also taught them because of who he was. His legend spread to the east as a young boy coming of age, and he was Jesus of Abydos, not Jesus of Bethlehem, not Jesus of Nazareth. He stayed out there for 16 years. He was 30 years old by the time he returned, and he was truly a master. At that point, he had learned everything, he had mastered everything, and he had taught everything, and he had come of age. So that's the true Christmas story. But then you got to ask the question, why? Why go through all this? Why bring the Son of God to this world of all worlds, occupied, dusty, primitive, oppressed? Why this world? Because that pathway, once it was put into what many are calling the Akashic Record, the Akashic Record is a record of everything that has ever happened in a universe. Can it be accessed by everyone? No. Parts of it can be, but you know who the writers are? The writers are us. You have to be mortal in order to write in the Akashic Record. You cannot write in the Akashic Record as a spirit. It doesn't count. It's just invisible ink. You have to be in flesh and blood in order to write in the Akashic Record. So Jesus came here to take on a physical body so he could write something in the Akashic Record. Yes, his life. Yes, healing. Yes, teaching. But what did he teach us? Did he teach us how to build a church? No, he didn't. In fact, he was kind of antagonistic toward the church. Did he establish a religion? No, he didn't. Did he come to tell us of his divinity? No, he didn't. He talked about his Father a lot, but not his divinity. He came to teach us of our divinity. We are the divine beings, the ones who came from the well of souls. We're the ones. It's us. So that is why he came to earth. And in April, around Easter, whichever Sunday is closest to that, I will discuss the death and resurrection. You don't want to miss it. I know it's a few months away. Just put it in your Yahoo calendar or whatever. I'll remind you before we get there. But now you know the true meaning of Christmas. Now you know why it really happened. Because the Son of God had to be here in the flesh in order to write the way, the path. I am the way and the light, and no one comes to the Father but by me. That's what he said. So the path has been written. It is up to us to follow. Go out and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little bit every day. And before long, you will have saved the planet. This is Brooks Agnew saying, peace, Earth Explorers.